There are some kinds of loneliness that no one talks about. The kind that exists in a crowded room. The kind that settles into your chest when you are surrounded by people who should love you, but choose not to see you. I lived in that loneliness for years. My name does not matter. What matters is that I was a mother. A mother-in-law. A woman who existed on the edges of a family that forgot she was ever at the center of it. This is not a story about revenge. This is not a story about bitterness or anger. This is a story about silence. About patience. About the moment I realized that love without respect is just a slow kind of suffering. And this is the story of the day I stopped suffering. I remember the first time I felt invisible. It was a Sunday afternoon. The kind of day that should have been filled with warmth and laughter. My son and his wife had invited me over for lunch. Or at least that is what they said. But when I arrived at their apartment, no one answered the door right away. I stood there for a long time. My hand raised to knock again. My heart already sinking. When the door finally opened, it was my daughter-in-law. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Like I had interrupted something important. She did not smile. She did not greet me. She just stepped aside and let me in. I walked into that house carrying a bag of groceries. Fresh vegetables. Fruits. A small cake I had baked that morning. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to feel useful. But no one said thank you. My son was on the couch, eyes fixed on his phone. He glanced up briefly and nodded. That was it. A nod. Not a hug. Not a word. I sat down at the table and waited. I waited for someone to speak to me. To ask me how I was. To include me in the conversation. But the conversation never came. They talked around me. About work. About friends. About plans I was not part of. I sat there like a piece of furniture. Present but irrelevant. I ate my meal in silence. I helped clean the dishes even though no one asked me to. And when I left, no one walked me to the door. That was the first time. But it was not the last. You might wonder why I kept going back. Why I kept showing up to a place where I was not wanted. The answer is simple. I was a mother. And mothers do not give up easily. I told myself it was just a phase. That they were busy. That they were adjusting to married life. That things would get better with time. But time did not make it better. Time made it worse. The invitations became less frequent. The phone calls stopped altogether. Birthdays passed without acknowledgement. Holidays came and went, and I spent them alone. I would see photos on social media. Pictures of family gatherings I was not invited to. Smiling faces around a table I was not seated at. And every time I saw those photos, something inside me broke a little more. But I did not say anything. I did not complain. I did not demand to be included. Because I believed that love should not have to be demanded. I believed that if I stayed patient, if I stayed kind, eventually they would see me again. I was wrong. Let me tell you about my son. His name is Arjun. I raised him alone after his father passed away when he was only 7 years old. I worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. I stayed up late helping him with homework. I attended every school event, every sports game, every moment that mattered. I gave him everything I had. Not because I expected anything in return, but because that is what mothers do. When he grew up, I was proud. He was kind. He was smart. He was respectful. Or so I thought. When he told me he was getting married, I was overjoyed. I welcomed his wife into our family with open arms. I told her she was not just gaining a husband. She was gaining a mother. I meant it. I helped them plan the wedding. I gave them money I had saved for years. I stayed up late cooking for guests, decorating, organizing. On their wedding day, I stood in the background and watched my son smile. I watched him look at his wife with so much love. And I thought to myself, this is it. This is the family I always dreamed of. But dreams do not always survive reality. The change did not happen overnight. It was gradual, subtle, like a slow poison that seeps into your veins without you noticing. First, it was small things. She would forget to return my calls. She would cancel plans at the last minute. She would speak to me in short, clipped sentences. I told myself it was nothing, that she was just stressed, that she was still getting used to the family. But then the small things became bigger. She stopped inviting me to family dinners. She stopped including me in decisions. She stopped acknowledging my presence altogether. And my son said nothing. I waited for him to defend me, to stand up for me, to remind her that I was his mother. But he stayed silent. Maybe he did not notice. Maybe he did not care. Or maybe he was too afraid to confront her. Whatever the reason, his silence hurt more than her coldness. Because silence is a choice. And he chose her comfort over my dignity. There was one moment that I will never forget. It was my birthday. I had not celebrated it in years. But that year I thought maybe things would be different. I waited all day for a call. A message. Anything. Nothing came. I told myself it was fine. That birthdays did not matter. That I was too old to care about such things. But late that night I saw a photo on social media. My son and his wife at a restaurant. Celebrating. Smiling. Toasting with glasses of wine. The caption read, "Celebrating life and love." They were celebrating. Just not with me. I sat in my empty living room and stared at that photo for a long time. And for the first time in years I cried. Not because I wanted a party. Not because I needed gifts. But because I realized that I had become invisible. I was not a part of their life. I was not a part of their love. I was just a memory they had moved on from. People always say that mothers are strong. That we endure. That we forgive. That we sacrifice without expecting anything in return. And maybe that is true. But strength does not mean you do not feel pain. Forgiveness does not mean you forget. Sacrifice does not mean you lose yourself. I had spent years being strong, being patient, being silent. And where did it get me? Alone. Ignored. Forgotten. I started to wonder if I had done something wrong. If I had failed as a mother. If I had somehow pushed them away without realizing it. I replayed every conversation. Every interaction. Every moment. But I could not find the mistake. I had loved them. I had supported them. I had respected their space. And still it was not enough. There were nights when I could not sleep. I would lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, wondering what I could have done differently. Should I have been more assertive? Should I have demanded their attention? Should I have confronted them sooner? But every time I thought about confronting them, I stopped myself. 'Cause I was afraid. Afraid that if I spoke up, I would lose them completely. Afraid that if I demanded respect, they would cut me off entirely. So I stayed quiet. I accepted the scraps of attention they gave me. I pretended that everything was fine. I convinced myself that this was just how modern families worked. That distance was normal. That independence was healthy. But deep down I knew the truth. This was not independence. This was abandonment. Let me take you back to the beginning. To the days when my son was just a boy. After my husband died, I was lost. I did not know how to be both a mother and a father. I did not know how to fill the emptiness he left behind. But I tried. I woke up early every morning to pack my son's lunch. I walked him to school even when I was exhausted. I read him bedtime stories even when my eyes could barely stay open. I worked during the day as a receptionist at a small clinic. And at night, I worked as a tutor for neighborhood children. The money was never enough. But I made it work. I gave up new clothes. I gave up vacations. I gave up any dreams I had for myself. Because my only dream was to give my son a better life. And I did. He grew up strong. Confident. Loved. He went to college. He got a good job. He built a life for himself. And I was proud. So proud. I thought that all the sacrifices had been worth it. That all the sleepless nights and endless work had led to this moment. But now looking back, I wonder if I gave too much. If I loved too much. If I made him believe that a mother's love requires nothing in return. When he introduced me to his future wife, I wanted to love her. I really did. Her name was Priya. She was beautiful. Educated. Polite. At least she was polite in the beginning. I invited her over for tea. I asked her about her family, her work, her dreams. I wanted to know her. To connect with her. She smiled. She answered my questions. But there was something distant in her eyes. Something that made me feel like I was being tolerated, not welcomed. But I ignored it. I told myself I was overthinking. That she was just nervous. That she would warm up to me eventually. So I kept trying. I offered to help with wedding planning. I gave her jewelry that had been in my family for generations. I cooked her favorite meals. I did everything I could to show her that I was not the kind of mother-in-law she needed to fear. But it did not matter, because she had already decided who I was. And in her mind I was the obstacle, the outsider, the woman who needed to be kept at a distance. The wedding was beautiful. I spent weeks preparing for it, cooking, cleaning, organizing. I wanted everything to be perfect. And it was. The decorations were stunning. The food was delicious. The guests were happy. But I was exhausted. I barely had time to eat. I barely had time to sit. And when the day was over, no one thanked me. Not my son. Not my daughter-in-law. Not even the extended family who had enjoyed the meals I prepared. I went home that night with aching feet and an empty heart. And I told myself it was okay. That the joy of seeing my son happy was enough. But it was not. In the months after the wedding, I tried to stay involved. I called them regularly. I invited them over for dinner. I asked if they needed anything. But every time I reached out, I was met with excuses. They were busy. They were tired. They had plans. First, I believed them. But then I noticed a pattern. They were never too busy for her family. They visited her parents every weekend. They attended every family gathering on her side. But when it came to me, there was always a reason to stay away. I started to feel like a burden. Like my presence was something they had to endure rather than enjoy. And slowly I stopped reaching out as much. I waited for them to call me, to invite me, to remember me. But the calls never came. There was a moment when I almost gave up. It was during a family gathering at her parents' house. I was not invited. But I saw the photos later. My son was there, smiling, laughing, surrounded by people who loved him. And I realized something. He was not unhappy. He was not missing me. He had simply replaced me. Her family had become his family. And I had become a stranger. I sat alone in my apartment that night, staring at those photos, and I felt something I had never felt before. Not sadness, not anger, but acceptance. I accepted that I was not needed anymore. I accepted that my role in his life had ended. And for the first time in years, I stopped waiting for things to change. Let me tell you what silence feels like. It feels like screaming into a void and hearing nothing back. It feels like knocking on a door that never opens. It feels like loving someone with everything you have, and realizing they do not love you back. That is what those years felt like. Years of showing up and being ignored. Years of giving without receiving. Years of hoping that one day things would be different. But hope is a dangerous thing. Keeps you waiting. Keeps you suffering. Keeps you stuck. And I was stuck. Stuck in a relationship that only existed in my mind. Stuck in a family that had moved on without me. Stuck in a role that no one valued anymore. I tried to talk to my son once. It was during one of the rare visits he made to my apartment. He had stopped by to drop off some groceries. A gesture that should have felt kind but instead felt like charity. I made him tea. I asked him how he was. He gave me short answers. His eyes kept drifting to his phone. And then I said it. I miss you. He looked up, surprised. What do you mean? I mean, I miss spending time with you. I miss being part of your life. He frowned. You are part of my life, Mom. Am I? He did not answer right away. And in that silence I had my answer. He looked uncomfortable. Like I had said something wrong. Like I was asking for too much. We are just busy, he said finally. You know how it is. I nodded. I did not push further. Because I knew that if I did, he would pull away even more. So I let it go. I smiled. I told him I understood. And I watched him leave, knowing that nothing would change. People used to tell me I was too soft. That I should have been more demanding. More assertive. That I should have made them respect me. But respect is not something you can force. Respect is given. Or it is not. And they chose not to give it. So I made a different choice. I chose to stop begging for it. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I remember because it was raining. I had been invited to a family gathering. A cousin's birthday party. I was excited. It had been months since I had been included in anything. I got dressed. I bought a gift. I arrived early. But when I walked into the venue, no one acknowledged me. Not my son. Not my daughter-in-law. Not even the relatives I had known for years. I stood there for a moment, waiting for someone to greet me. No one did. So I found a seat in the corner and sat down. I watched as everyone laughed and talked and enjoyed themselves. And I felt like a ghost. Like I was there but not really there. At one point my daughter-in-law walked past me. I smiled at her. She did not smile back. She looked right through me. Like I did not exist. And in that moment something inside me shattered. Not with sadness. Not with anger. But with clarity. I realized that I had spent years trying to earn a place in a family that did not want me. And I was done. I left the party early. No one noticed. I walked home in the rain, letting the water soak through my clothes. And when I got home I made a decision. I would stop reaching out. I would stop calling. I would stop showing up uninvited. If they wanted me in their life, they would have to make the effort. And if they did not, then I would finally have my answer. The first few weeks were hard. I kept reaching for my phone, wanting to call, wanting to check in. But I stopped myself. I reminded myself that I deserved better. That I deserved to be wanted, not tolerated. And slowly it got easier. I started to fill my days with other things. I joined a book club. I started volunteering at a local community center. I reconnected with old friends. I rediscovered parts of myself that I had forgotten. The part of me that loved painting. The part of me that enjoyed long walks in the park. The part of me that did not need anyone else to feel whole. And for the first time in years I felt free. Months passed. And in those months my phone stayed silent. No calls. No messages. No invitations. It hurt at first. But then it stopped hurting. Because I realized something important. Their silence was not a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of their priorities. And I was simply not one of them. I started to build a new life. A life that did not revolve around waiting for someone to notice me. I made new friends. I tried new hobbies. I traveled to places I had always wanted to see. I laughed more. I smiled more. And I stopped feeling invisible. Because I was finally seeing myself. But life has a strange way of coming full circle. Just when you think you have moved on, the past finds a way to knock on your door. And that is exactly what happened. It was a cold evening in November. I was at home reading a book when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was my son. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let it ring, to protect the peace I had finally found. But another part of me, the part that was still a mother, could not ignore it. I answered. Hello, Mom. His voice sounded different. Strained. Yes. I need to talk to you. I waited. It is Priya. She is. We are going through something. And we need your help. I closed my eyes. There it was. After months of silence. After years of being pushed aside. Now they needed me. I did not respond right away. I let the silence stretch. Because for the first time I was not the one waiting. What kind of help? I asked finally. He hesitated. Can we come over? I will explain everything. I thought about saying no. I thought about telling him that I was busy. That I had plans. That I was no longer available at their convenience. But I did not. Because despite everything, I was still his mother. And mothers do not turn their backs. Even when their children have turned theirs. I said quietly. Come over. They arrived an hour later. I opened the door and for the first time in a long time, I saw my son's face up close. He looked tired. Older. And beside him stood Priya. She would not look at me. I stepped aside and let them in. We sat in the living room. The same room where I had spent so many nights alone. No one spoke at first. And then my son began. Mom, I know we have not been around much. I know we have been distant. I said nothing. But something happened. And we do not know what to do. He glanced at Priya. She was staring at the floor, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Priya lost her job, he continued. And we have been struggling financially. We tried to handle it on our own, but things have gotten worse. We are behind on rent. We might lose the apartment. He paused. We need help, Mom. We need you. I looked at him. And I felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No bitterness. Just a quiet, distant sadness. Why now? I asked softly. He blinked. What? Why are you asking for my help now? After all this time? He opened his mouth but no words came out. Priya finally looked up. Because we have no one else, she said quietly. Her voice was small, broken, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I leaned back in my chair. Let me understand this correctly, I said. For years you did not need me. You did not call me. You did not invite me. You made it very clear that I was not welcome in your life. My son looked down. But now that you are in trouble, now that you need something, suddenly I matter again. Mom, it is not like that, he said quickly. Then what is it like? He struggled to find the words. We were trying to build our own life. We did not mean to shut you out. But you did. The words hung in the air. Priya wiped her eyes. I am sorry, she whispered. I looked at her. Are you really sorry? Or are you just sorry because you need something from me? She did not answer. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked outside. The street was quiet. Empty. Just like my life had been for so long. I understand that you are going through a difficult time, I said, my back still turned to them. I understand that you are scared. That you do not know what to do. I paused. But you need to understand something too. I turned to face them. For years I waited. I waited for a phone call, a visit, an invitation, anything that would make me feel like I still mattered to you. My voice was steady, and I got nothing. My son looked away. I was not asking for much. I was not asking to control your life or interfere in your marriage. I just wanted to be part of it, to be remembered. I took a breath. But I was not. Priya was crying now. And my son sat there, his head in his hands. I could have turned them away. I could have told them that they made their choice and now they had to live with it. Part of me wanted to. But I did not. Because that is not who I am. I sat back down. I will help you, I said quietly. My son looked up, relief flooding his face. But there are conditions. He nodded quickly. Anything. I looked at both of them. First, you will respect me. Not just when you need something. But always. You will include me in your life. You will call me. You will visit me. You will treat me like family. They both nodded. Second, this is not charity. I will help you get back on your feet. But you will work to repay me. Not with money, but with effort. With time. With presence. I will, my son said. And third, I paused, looking directly at Priya. You will apologize. Not just today, but through your actions. You will show me that you understand what you did. That you regret it. That you are willing to change. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I am sorry, she said again. And this time her voice sounded sincere. Over the next few weeks I helped them. I gave them money to cover their rent. I helped Priya with her job search. I cooked meals and brought them over. But this time it was different. This time they were grateful. My son called me every day. He asked how I was. He invited me over for dinner. Priya thanked me. She listened when I spoke. She included me in conversations. It was not perfect, but it was progress. And slowly something began to heal. One evening, Priya and I sat alone in her kitchen. She was making tea, and I was helping her organize some papers. She stopped suddenly and looked at me. I owe you more than an apology, she said quietly. I looked up. I owe you the truth. I waited. I was jealous of you, she admitted. When I married your son, I felt like I had to compete with you. Like I had to prove that I was enough. That I was more important. She looked down. So I pushed you away. I made you feel unwanted. Because I was scared that if you were too close, he would choose you over me. Her voice broke. But I was wrong. And I am sorry. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. Thank you for telling me, I said softly. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. I do not know if I can ever make it up to you. You do not have to make it up to me, I said. You just have to do better. She nodded. And we sat there in silence, two women who had hurt each other, trying to find a way forward. Months passed. And things continued to improve. My son started visiting me more. He brought his wife. They stayed for dinner. They asked about my day. Priya found a new job. And when she got the offer, she called me first. I got it, she said, her voice full of excitement. I smiled. I am proud of you. There was a pause. Thank you, she said, for everything. One day my son and I went for a walk in the park. The sun was setting and the air was cool. Mom, he said quietly, I want to say something. I looked at him. I am sorry. For everything. For not seeing what was happening. For not standing up for you. For letting you feel alone. His voice was thick with emotion. You deserved better. And I should have been better. I stopped walking. I turned to face him. Forgive you, I said. He looked surprised. Just like that? I smiled. Just like that. Because forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about choosing not to carry the weight anymore. He hugged me. And for the first time in years I felt like I had my son back. This story does not have a perfect ending. Because life does not work that way. But it has a peaceful one. My relationship with my son and daughter-in-law is not what it used to be. It is better. Because it is built on respect. On honesty. On effort. I am no longer invisible. I am seen. I am valued. I am loved. And that is enough. If you are someone who has felt invisible, know this. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. Your value does not decrease because someone failed to see it. And you do not have to beg for a place in someone's life. Because the right people will make space for you. And the ones who do not are simply not your people. I spent years waiting to be seen. And in the end, the person who needed to see me most was myself. So I stopped waiting. I started living. And I became the woman I was always meant to be. Not invisible, but whole. This is a story of quiet strength, of dignity, of learning that love must be paired with respect or it becomes a cage. May it remind you that you are never too old, never too late, to reclaim your worth.